Well, good morning.
Good morning. Good evening for me.
Yes, we're in the opposite. Most people probably don't know that. Normally it's evening for me and morning for you, and today we're doing it the other way around, as we sometimes do.
Yeah, we're uncontrollable wild men.
We're crazy. Hazy crazy.
You never know what time of day we're going to record.
You're looking sporty, though. You've come back from tennis or something, have you?
Yes, it's men's night at the tennis club tonight, so I've been playing tennis for the last 90 minutes. But people don't want to hear about that, although I would happily tell them.
I know you would.
Yeah, but let's get on with some parish notices. I was reading a message on the Reddit from LM285 who said, "What a great podcast." This was talking about a previous episode that I think LM285 found amusing.
Our podcast, just to clarify.
Yeah, apparently
Wow.
so.
Fair enough.
And apparently LM285 was listening on their run and said, "Everyone I ran past on my run thinks I'm very odd for the noises I make." And this makes me want to throw out the question to the civilians. Have you ever made an unusual noise while listening to the Unmade podcast? A giggle, a little, a titter?
Groan.
A groan?
That laugh that happens in the middle of a drink in movies, you know, when people spit their drink across the table at someone.
A spit take. If you have ever made an unusual noise while listening to the Unmade podcast, we would love to hear from you. Tell us about it. Better yet, do a re-recording of the noise you made while listening. What noise do you make while listening to the podcast? Email it to us at unmadefm@gmail.com. We want to hear the noises you make while listening. Maybe we'll share them if we think they're appropriate.
Snoring, perhaps, could be in there.
Yeah.
Snorting, you know, some people snort when they laugh. So we got a snorter here. Snorter.
Yeah. Send us your Unmade podcast noises. Another very interesting message here. I found a photo of Tim in a house library. This was in New South Wales, and I shouted out like a crazy man. My friends thought I was having a conniption. A conniption is a new word to me, by the way. I'd never heard of that word. It means like a tantrum, apparently.
Oh.
I've been sent a picture of the picture. Is this the great man himself, third from right?
What?
So, Tim, I want to send you a picture. So, Tim, this photograph, which was hanging in a library in New South Wales, Cameron spotted it and went crazy because he thought it was you. Is that you, third from right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Hanging in a library. What? What a classic.
I asked for more information. This is hanging in a library in Laura in the Blue Mountains.
Yes.
It's a library owned by Beth and Greg Hammond called the Brackenbrae Library. Apparently it's mostly God books, he says. So it's some kind of religious library, perhaps?
Ah, yes. This is like a private library, like it's in a person's home or a retreat centre kind of place that they lease out.
Yes.
Yes, I know everyone in this group. This is like, these are all the state directors of something called Arrow Leadership Australia, which is like a leadership program that people engage in.
Yeah, all right. There you go. Tim with his quiver full of arrows.
Yeah. Jeez, I'm looking overly serious in that photo. I don't know.
You are.
We've obviously been throwing around some heavy leadership theory that day, and it's weighted on my mind.
Pretty impressive, though. I saw this picture on the wall and went, hang on, is that Tim from the Unmade podcast?
Oh, indeed, yeah. I've got some good friends in that photo.
Who knows when you're going to find a picture of Tim hanging on the wall of a library? You never can tell.
I've seen people send me pictures of oil paintings, obviously, that decorate libraries all over the world, but I've never seen a hand snap like this one.
I understand you had a bit of an interaction recently as well.
Yes, we had another unmade civilian arrive at church on Sunday.
At your church?
Yeah. They pop in from time to time to say hello. Mm. And generally being a new face, I go up to people and welcome them and, sort of say, what's brought you here? And then they tend to look a little bit sheepish. Like they go, the Unmade podcast. And then I go, welcome. It's great to see you. So on Sunday we had Luca from Germany.
Wow.
Who's travelling around Australia and came to Adelaide and came to Malvern Uniting Church.
Were you preaching?
Oh, yeah. Preaching up a storm, I was. Oh, yes.
So basically, he got his own personal podcast with Tim Hine.
That's right. Everyone else was listening too, but that's right.
Yeah.
He ended up spending a couple of nights couch surfing at a member of our community's house who he got chatting to. And they said, look, if you need some accommodation, he's like, brilliant. And went back and spent a couple of nights. So he's still there, I think, today. I think Luca may be moving into the community, which is fantastic.
Is it true that he got to meet Mrs. Hine?
That's true as well, yes. Yeah. And I forgot to, I usually introduce you, because normally that's the high point of the visit. You know, I sort of chat a while and maybe give some little bit of merch or something. And then the climax of the visit is, and here's Mrs. Hine. But this time she introduced herself. She came over, hello, I'm Dawn. Who are you? Oh, yes, I'm on the podcast.
She thinks it's her podcast.
That's right. And there are selfies all around. It's very funny. I love it. I did hear a whisper that he was heading down to, with his companion, down to the Fluoro Peninsula today. So it could be that he was going to Tim and Brady Cave at the Bump.
Ooh.
I don't know that for sure, but yes, that would be another key spot to visit on any Unmade tour of Adelaide.
Did you reveal the coordinates and, turn left at the second stone and all that sort of stuff?
No, I heard this after the fact. I just heard this from the person whose house he's crashed at, and they said, I was going to Fluoro, and I just thought in my mind, I know where he's going. Yes. There's nothing to see down there except the search for Tim and Brady Cave.
I like that you've lived in South Australia for all these years and you still can't pronounce Fluoro.
Fluoro. How do you say it? Fluoro. What did I say?
Fluoro. It's not like a fluoro pen.
Like a fluoro lights. Is
like a highlighter.
The ones we replace with LEDs. Yeah, that's right. Fluoro, like the colour of the suntan lotion. You know that zinc cream we used to put on, that bright pink stuff?
Well, there you go, people. If you're ever in Adelaide, Malvern Uniting Church is the place to go. Were you disappointed? Were you thinking, oh, here's a soul I can save? And it's like, oh, he just wants a bit of Unmade merch.
Yes. I saw him during the church service and I was like, oh, there's a new face. I'll have to say g'day to him. And, I wonder what his story is and if he's engaging in the church community. And it's like, Unmade. I understand. Which means it's, hello and goodbye. Off to Germany.
Yeah.
Via the Fluoro Peninsula.
Not if you gave the sermon of the century. Well, he's like, I came here for the merch, but that's your chance, man. That's your chance.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's funny when I get talking to people and I say, so what do you do and so forth, and they say, you can sort of get a sense of their loyalty. So if it's sort of, it's like, I'm studying science, and I sort of go, you're more of a Brady guy, and they sort of go, yeah. I get a lot of Brady guys coming to see me, that's for sure.
What's the giveaway that they're a Tim guy?
I don't know. They're wearing a Radiohead T-shirt, or they're they're dressed like that. Maybe they're Nick Cave. Then I know.
Would you be disappointed if Nick Cave came to your church and said, "Sorry, I'm more of a Brady guy"?
More of a Brady guy. I think that would sum up. That's the story of my life right there. That would be fantastic.
So, in a recent episode, Tim pitched the idea of movie theatres from our life, our favourite movie theatres and things like that. And can I say, this struck more of a chord with the listenership than I thought it would. And we had lots and lots of messages and Reddit comments and emails, and I want to thank everyone who sent them in. I can't possibly read them all out because there were too many of them. But this was really something that people wanted to talk about. A
rare Tim idea that resonated with the public.
It did. It resonated all right. Let me read a couple of messages. Shex13 said, in my hometown of Valley Stream, New York, there's an old abandoned movie theatre that was vacant for years. As a teenager, my friends and I would explore inside. It was so old the aisle seats had candle holders in the armrests. The inside was covered in bird poop as there were holes in the roof. We used to get all the way up into the projector room and check it out. I took a reel of intermission film one time as a souvenir. I never knew the history of the place, but just now I looked it up, and it turns out Metallica played there in 1984. Dang. I love the idea of playing in an old abandoned movie theatre. That sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah, that is cool. I don't think it's going anymore, but there was a Twitter account that I followed, which was kind of like abandoned places, and I had some wonderful images of movie theatres. It's almost like the last film's finished, they've walked out, closed the door, and it's exactly as it was, except for the weeds growing up through the floor and, the dust, and there's some beautiful images of places like that.
Had a message here from Some Jeff, who says, when we were kids, the local Scarborough Theatre had a really old ticket ripper guy named James. He'd been ripping tickets for over 50 years. Our parents would joke that he was standing there when they built the theatre. At some point, the company let him go and we were in awe, but he quickly popped up at a competitor front and centre. Here's a quote from the Toronto Star. The 83-year-old who died Sunday in his sleep from heart failure was a fixture at Toronto movie theatres for 55 years, where he worked primarily as a ticket taker. To put his career in some perspective, James Loader ripped tickets at every single Star Wars movie ever.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. You become an institution. How fantastic is that?
For just ripping tickets, just taking the tickets and ripping them.
Yeah.
What a job to do for 55 years.
For 50,
amazing.
Well, I imagine he got to see a film every now and then too, though. That's a pretty cool thing. Yeah. Maybe a film a day. It's a wonderful thing. These people that serve or work in, you associate them with one building. They've got their little store. There's a guy in the city here who's Frank, a hairdresser, and he's been a hairdresser. You would probably know of him. Frank's in just off Rundle Street, and he's been there in the same hairdresser for 50 years. Something ridiculous. Working every day and Saturday mornings and so forth. And his haircuts were still $25 and. He's been there all that time in that one little room. It's just, it's quite incredible.
Amazing. One last letter I'd like to read, Tim. It was quite a touching one. This comes from Cameron in Melbourne. As you know, in a few recent episodes, Tim and I have discussed the television program Sale of the Century. This is a quiz show in Australia, very much part of our childhood, and we were talking about legendary characters who were on it. Carey, the great champion, Virginia, another champion, whose son, I believe, is a listener to the podcast. Cameron in Melbourne wrote this message. Hi, Tim and Brady. Hearing your discussion about Sale of the Century a few episodes back brought a tear to my eye, and I'll tell you why. My father lost his battle with cancer late last year at the age of 64, and he was on Sale of the Century as a young man in his 20s. He had just begun his PhD and was very intelligent. He swept through the first night, winning easily, and was called back to film a second episode. He was ahead the whole time, and coming up to the very last round was $20 up on his closest opponent. Apparently, his opponent got $25 off the board and ended up winning that night by $5. That's just one question in Sale of the Century.
Yeah.
The real kicker was that this was the one night that month that a pricey BMW, was being given to the winner that night. Instead, my father won a small outdoor chair set, including 4 plastic chairs with a green cover and a small white table. We have kept this set in good condition, and to this day it lives in my mother's house and serves as a sort of memory of my late father. Sorry for the long and late reply, but this one really meant something to me, and I'm glad you've given me an opportunity to tell the story. I love the podcast, and I'm always looking forward to the next episode. Cheers from Cameron in Melbourne.
That's fantastic.
Love it.
That's marvellous. Love the idea of having something in their house and saying, you know where we got this? I won it on Sale of the Century. That's a fantastic thing to be able to say.
And if you'd won the car, that car would have been gone by now.
That's true. Car,
chairs and table, that's what you want. That's going to last a lifetime.
That's right. Oh, that's fantastic.
Well done. Thanks, Cameron. Thanks for telling us that story about your dad.
I love the idea that it's either Elise Platt or Delvine Delaney or Joe Bailey who stood in front of that table and chairs at one stage and waved their arm and,
Sparky.
Sparky. That's magic.
Ideas for a podcast. Tim, have you got an idea for a podcast?
I do have an idea. This is inspired a little bit by our recent holiday. Now we're back at work, it feels a while ago, but we on our holiday went on a road trip. a car trip. And we listen to some podcasts on the car trip, and a lot of people say they love a long car trip because they listen to podcasts, but I actually think there's a podcast idea about long car trips.
Yeah?
It's a podcast about, I mean, it could be called Road Trip or Are We There Yet? The most commonly used phrase in a car trip.
Yep.
It's a podcast about and for long car trips, which I think turn the car into sort of a mini universe, a world in its own, where you share a very close space over a long period of time.
How does one of these podcast episodes work? If I was to put one on, like, what would I hear? How long is an episode? And like, is it just people talking about car trips, or is it sort of like does it have utility? Is it for use on the car trip?
Its utility is that you listen to it, but I actually think there's a couple of ideas that come to mind. The first one is that people tell stories about car trips, particularly when they were perhaps younger. And the reason I say younger is when you're a kid on a car trip, it feels like forever. Like it's just forever. And you tell stories and anecdotes of things that happened. But then I think there are spin-off ideas as well, discussions about, road movies as a whole genre of movies of, on the road and planes, trains and automobiles and even Blues Brothers and When Harry Met. So, there's a million road movies, which is a whole subgenre as well.
Thelma and Louise, of course.
Very famously, yes, that one in particular. Yeah. So I think that's a whole kind of genre. In fact, people, perhaps as a feature on the podcast, people could say what their favourite road movie is while they're telling anecdotes about their road movie story. Their road trip story, the thing that happened to them. There's lots of little quirky details in these. It feels like families fly everywhere at the moment, putting COVID aside. When I was a kid, no one flew. Like rich people flew. Like Elton John flew to Australia and the Prime Minister flew in a plane. Everyone else spent 12 hours in a car. That was just the reality of it. Don't you agree?
Oh, completely. It's funny. You know how like from your early childhood, you probably have 20 or 30 pretty solid memories, like memorable things that happened, stories that you could retell and things that have stuck in your head from when you were a kid. And I reckon of that 20 or 30, maybe 10 of them I'm sitting in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
These seminal moments in my life. I'm looking at the side of my mum's face in the passenger seat or the side of my dad's head. Like there are these moments, and some of them are to do with the trip itself and being in the car, but other ones are just moments in life, things that happened in life, memorable learning experiences, and I just happened to be in the back seat of a car when it happened, and that's where I'm positioned. I think I've told this story before, and it happened in a car. We were driving across Australia, like you did, because every holiday you did was driving those same few roads across outback South Australia.
Yeah.
And we were going past all these big lorries, semi-trailers, and my dad was looking at them all, and every time one went past, he would comment on it. Oh, that's a nice one. I like that one. I like that make of lorry. I like how shiny it is. And he was just kind of fantasizing about being a lorry driver out loud as all these lorries went past. And then my mum got a piece of paper, a scrap of paper, and wrote on it and passed it to me in the back seat. And I read it, and it said, "Why don't you get your dad a book with pictures of lorries and trucks for his birthday?" Because the birthday was coming up. And like that was a real seminal moment for me, because it was learning that when someone expresses an interest in something, you pay attention to it and save that information for later.
Yep.
To buy them a present. And when you're a kid, that's kind of a moment, isn't it, where you figure that out. Oh, okay, so and so likes this. So that was a learning moment for me. But it happened in a car, and I still remember where I was sitting, and Mum writing it and passing it to me in the back seat, and like looking at Dad and keeping it a secret. It was a secret between me and Mum to keep from Dad and stuff like that. And like it happened in a car, and I could probably list 3 or 4 other learning moments like that in my life that were in the back of a car.
Yeah. My wife had an interesting perspective on this when we were choosing where to live and driving around, knowing we're having kids. Because the default thinking is to try and live in a way that minimises time in the car. You don't want to be stuck in traffic. You don't want to be driving everywhere all the time, driving from here to there like Mum's taxi. And my wife suddenly pointed out, she goes, but that's where all the good parenting happens. Like sitting together driving along is when suddenly a child debriefs their day or talks about an issue. So being, alone in the car driving along is actually, it's like special time with mum or dad to ask questions and to talk. And she says you actually want to, in one perspective, you want to maximise that time because that's when stuff comes out that won't come out in the rush and busyness of, home when everyone's around. And I thought that's a genius perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. You're shooting fish in a barrel, aren't you? Because you've got their undivided attention. That's such a great insight. Yeah, so many great memories sitting in a car. And, lovely memories too. Like, I had an auntie and uncle who lived up in the Adelaide Hills, and we would go to their house sometimes for, family evenings, and we would drive back. And that was a long drive when you were a little kid, driving from the Adelaide Hills back down to the plains. And it was always at night, and there were views of the city, which I would never see because I lived in the city. So seeing the view of Adelaide from the hills was amazing. But it was always late, and you'd fall asleep in the car on the way home, and then you'd pull up at home, and you'd pretend to be asleep because you knew if you pretend to be asleep, Dad would carry you to bed, which was the best thing ever. And I remember so many times Dad saying, "Oh, Brady's asleep, I'll carry him in." And my mum's going, "He's not asleep, I can see his eyes moving, get him up." And Dad's like, "Nah, he's asleep. Let's carry him." And I'm like, obviously awake, but pretending to be asleep because I want Dad to carry me.
Snoring really loudly. Fake snoring, yeah. I'll tell you, I had a certain perspective, because I was an only child, so I had the whole back seat to myself. So I would lay down horizontally with my feet.
Luxury.
I know. It was like a first class. I got all my first class travel in the first 10 years of my life. And what would happen as we drove along at night time on a long trip, it's a really interesting pattern on the roof and the back seat. You're driving along, so you're looking at the roof, so you're looking at nothing really. You're just looking at the canvas roof in this car. But then as you are going past light posts, the light of a light post is arriving and then being intense and then moving past the different parts of the window and then passing, and then there's another one. So it's like this little pattern of a sequence of a little light show that's in a rhythm the whole time. And it does, because there are different windows and parts of the back of the car, I don't know if I'm explaining this well, it's like the lights move around in a funny sequence all the time. Like there's basically big shadows falling in different patterns and ways. That one goes, that one goes, that one, and that one sweeps past. That one goes, that one goes, that one, and that one sweeps past.
Great podcast material here.
But I was doing a lot of hand movements there as people didn't notice.
I tell you what I remember about driving in the backseat of the car as a kid at night time and being amazed by this. And that was the way that the moon on the horizon followed our car as we drove along. Because you know how it appears that the moon's, because the moon's far away, it looks like it's moving along with your car.
Yeah,
and then when we would stop at traffic lights, the moon would stop. And then we'd start again, and the moon would start following us again. And I was amazed that the moon knew to start and stop moving through the sky as our car
like a spotlight,
started and stopped. It was incredible. It was incredible.
Were you on long trips? Are you a pillow or no pillow person?
Do you know what? I can't remember. I can't even remember.
You don't remember being given the option? Do you want to bring your pillow in the car or not? Or
no. The thing I remember, and this is another classic of kids in the back seat. And that was, how you divide the back seat in half, right? Like, this is my half. Well, you probably do know this because you've got two girls. But
yes.
I had my sister and me in the back seat, and you would get very territorial. Your stuff mustn't encroach onto my half of the back seat. But the thing that made it interesting was our car had split seats at the back, a hatchback car, so the seats could split and fold down. But the split wasn't in the exact middle. The split was kind of a little bit off-centered, which most cars that have split seat backs are a bit off-centered that way. So the natural seam and split down the back of the chair with me and my sister was advantageous to one person. One person would have more than the other.
Right.
And I always had the bigger chunk.
Yes.
Because I was older. so my sister would have this smaller area that she had to contain herself within, and still I would encroach onto her side. But
Did you always on the same side on trips? You had your side, that was always your side.
Yeah, I can't remember which side it was, but I remember we had sides.
And you can read in the car on long trips? You're a reader? You know, some people can't.
Yeah, I can read and do things like that, yeah. Never had problems with that.
It's one of my favourite places to read on a trip, or certainly on a bus and stuff, but we're talking about a car, a road trip even still.
I hope you're not driving.
No. Yes, that's right.
So, Tim, something I did want to ask you about, because I know you went on this recent road trip across Australia with the family, and you did divulge to me in a message that you had another unfortunate but almost quintessential Australian experience.
Oh, yes.
And that is, at certain times of the day and night, kangaroos are known to jump across the road at bad times. They're idiots, basically. And you had a kangaroo encounter?
Oh, yeah. See, kangaroos don't follow the law that we all learn as kids, and that is you look to the right, look to the left, and look to the right again, and then cross the road. They just bound out. And particularly at dusk, when you're going across certain parts, they can suddenly come out of nowhere. And sure enough, even though we're driving along, and every time we say, "Oh, it's that time of day, watch out for the kangaroos," we hit a kangaroo. Yeah.
Talk me through what happened. I've never actually had the experience. I know many people who've had the experience, but I never have. What you're driving along at X kilometres per hour. What do you see? What happens? What does it sound like? What happened?
I wasn't going at full speed because it was a slightly curvy kind of road. So I'd pulled back, and because it's kind of dusk as well. So we're driving along. Often, a lot of times, a kangaroo can just run into the side of you, like they're just crossing the road at full speed. But that didn't. So you've got to really watch out for that. But this one, the kangaroo was sort of running alongside the road. So we were sort of pulling up and slowing down a little bit because we were catching up to it. And it's sort of, oh, wow, look at that. It's going alongside the road. And I actually had the thought he could cross over at any time, or he could veer onto the road. And sure enough, he veered onto the road. And suddenly, and so we hit it.
So you kind of rear-ended him in a way.
We hit him sideways. So it's like he suddenly did a sharp right in front of the car, and we hit him on the side. Yeah, the very nose of the car.
What happened to the car, and what happened to the roo?
Well, it was an awful bang because the kangaroos are decent size. Then suddenly we've got a VW, so the big round VW badge just suddenly shot like a discus over the windscreen. So that's where he hit us, right on the nose. And so, of course, we stopped and almost immediately and hit, drove around him. Or, you sort of negotiate your way to a stop and you realise, oh, gosh, he's there. I'm trying to think, he must have hit us and gone past us. We didn't go over him, but we certainly, it gave you a shock and you go, oh, dear, oh, dear. And immediately one of my daughters burst into tears in the back, realising what had happened. Because we're all focused on the kangaroo. We're all going, oh, look at this beautiful big kangaroo. And then suddenly it was like, oh, dear. We did a U-turn and went back and pulled over, and I jumped out to check whether it was alive and went, and one of my other daughters, the other daughter, jumped out as well. And she was quite curious about the whole thing. So one of them's very upset, in tears in the car. And the other one's just like, oh, I've got to have a look at this. This is interesting. And so we went back, and he or she, I think she was clearly dead, sadly. So, but was in the middle of the road, so then had to grab it by the tail and drag it off the road.
Oh, no.
So that's not a very pleasant thing
Was
to do.
Brooklyn your dog in the car?
He was, yeah. He was going nuts, barking, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was so he had to be calmed down. And so one kid crying, the dog going crazy, it was one of those sort of tight situations, and not very pleasant. You feel, it's a roo, so you feel...
It's an icon, Australian icon.
Skippy. It's an awful feeling. It's an awful feeling to kill an animal like that. So we pulled it off the road and then went, okay, well, there we go. And I went back and opened the door and comforted my other daughter, who was in tears, and explained, these things happen, and that he had died instantly. He wouldn't even have known what happened. And then we stopped, and she didn't want to see him or her. She didn't want to see the kangaroo. But we stopped and we said a little prayer for the kangaroo, which was a nice thing to do as well.
What did you say? What did you pray?
We pray, well, we thank God for the animals. We thank God for all these animals, and for this one in particular, and for the life that it lived, and now his life is over, and that this animal will be with God. And that's the end of his life here, and that's it. And we thank the Lord that it wasn't painful as well. and said amen, and she was a bit comforted. I tell you right, we drove pretty darn slowly the rest of the trip, and we did see other kangaroos in the dusk, and we crawled along on the way home.
Is it your teaching or belief that animals go to heaven?
I don't know about animals. I believe there are animals in heaven. I believe the new heavens and new earth, that God's creating, contains animals. I don't know if they're the same animals, because I don't know if they have the same level of consciousness and a soul in the way that we do. I don't really know. I do believe people do, but I don't know about animals. But I believe there are animals there, but I don't know if they're the same animals. So I don't know. And Scripture doesn't really say much about it. It does say that God knows the animals and loves the animals. And if God is the creator of all things, then he created a massive diversity over them over a massive amount of time. And that's a wonderful thing, a deliberate and beautiful thing, if that's the story you hold to. They're not an accident or a byproduct or just meat. There's something purposeful there, and that's a pretty wonderful way to look at the world. So that's what we prayed, yeah.
There are many road trip questions and things I'd like to discuss. Favourite games on a road trip, obviously, is, the old I Spy and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a go-to game?
We do. It's I Spy, and I've got to be honest, I'm pretty over it. I'm pretty done. I feel like it's the game of last resort, and look, I'm pretty done with I Spy. I mean, I love the people and I love playing, but we got to think of some other games. We've got to Google a few other games and get some advice. So.
I feel like I'm running out of animals on Old MacDonald's farm that can go moo moo here and moo moo there.
Yeah. Well, there's only so many animals that can go moo moo here and moo moo there, man. Have you tried other noises? Perhaps that might open up the horizon of other possibilities.
We're coming up with all sorts of things just so we can make different noises. Old MacDonald had a farm, and on that farm he had a fax machine. so we can do some different noises.
He had an early internet collection.
Yeah. Nice one, man. Road trips. I like it. Good idea. Tim, this episode has been supported by Hover.
Oh, brilliant. Fantastic.
Domain registrar Hover. Go to hover.com/unmade. Check out their easy interface, how easy it is to buy all your domains, your .coms and your .nets and all the dots you could possibly want. You can control them, you can attach them to your website, you can divert them to other things. Not only have Hover got great prices, it's just really easy to use, really simple. I got an email unsolicited from Michael H. just recently, who said, "Hi, Tim and Brady. I just wanted to share my recent experience with Hover. You two are always telling of its greatness, and I finally had reason to concur. I was laying in bed thinking about an upcoming project when I realised that what I really needed was my own domain name.
Yes.
Within the same thought, I was thinking about you guys and your discount code, but then I couldn't remember the name of the website." So we're obviously not doing that good a job. "It was late at night, and my mind was an utter blank. All I could remember at first was timhine.ninja. After a short pause, Hover sprang to mind, and I let out a physical sigh of relief in the knowledge that my domain uncertainty was over."
Oh, that's fantastic.
And by the way, if you go to timhine.ninja, which is a domain that Tim has registered with Hover, it currently diverts to our Hover landing page where you can get the discount. So if you can't remember hover.com/unmade, go to timhine.ninja and you'll get the same service.
Well, apparently it sticks in the mind more. So if Hover were ever to rebrand, Tim.ninja is what they'll come for, that's for sure.
Timhine.ninja.
Timhine. Right, okay.
That's what they want to call themselves. People, check out Hover. They're a great supporter of the Unmade podcast, and they're a really good service. I've got a boatload of domains registered with them. I know Tim's got a growing family with them as well.
Yes.
Just domains that are something you need in so many walks of life, and Hover is the best place to buy and manage them. Hover.com/unmade. 10% off. 10% off your first purchase if you go to hover.com/unmade. Now it's time for everybody's favourite segment. This week, here it is. It is Baboon of the Week.
Oh, Baboon of the Week. Fantastic.
Yes.
My favourite segment.
Now, Tim,
Yes.
if ever a baboon is going to go to heaven, it is Jack, the Chakma baboon. Let me tell you, there are so many baboons that I could tell you great stories about, but there are few that equal the story of Jack. There was a railway signalman in South Africa called James Wide. His nickname was James Jumper Wide because he worked on the railways and he was really good at jumping from carriage to carriage.
Right.
Although I don't know how good he was at jumping from carriage to carriage because he actually had an accident and became a double leg amputee. So James Jumper Wide was a double leg amputee in the late 1800s in South Africa, and he bought a pet baboon, Jack, and he trained Jack to push his wheelchair. But he also trained Jack to do his job on the railway, which was a railway signalman in a little booth, a little room next to the railway tracks, pulling levers and changing the points and stuff like that. And he trained his baboon to do the job.
No way.
And he would just sit in his room and do his hobby, which I think was taxidermy. He was stuffing birds, while his baboon was off by the side of the tracks doing all the work, pulling all the levers and changing the signals. So anyway, apparently one day a passenger going past in the train saw what was happening, saw that there was this baboon that was controlling all the railway lines and complained. So the railway company did this investigation and they went and saw Jack and saw him at work and what was going on. And they were so blown away by how good this baboon was at controlling the railway. They left him in post and paid him 20 cents a day and gave him a bottle of beer each week. And he went on for years and years doing this job.
Wow.
Until sadly he died of tuberculosis in 1890, and his skull is still on display in a museum in South Africa. The legend of Jack's greatness is not forgotten. But if ever there was a baboon worthy of being Baboon of the Week, it's Jack, the Chakma baboon from South Africa.
Fantastic.
What a hero.
What a hero. What a hero baboon. Oh,
yeah.
Majestic.
Apparently, as the trains go past, they would toot, like a number of toots that signal to the signalman what track they want to be on and what needs to be pulled and pushed and that, so that the tracks are lined up the right way. So Jack would just sit there waiting for the train to go past, count the toots from the train, and then pull the right levers and control the controls to configure the railway correctly for the train to keep going. Did it for a decade.
Well, doing it once is the miracle. Doing it for a decade is like we can do. But doing it once is amazing. Getting it right once, that's incredible. Well done, Jack. But he wasn't taxidermied.
No, he wasn't. Well, no, I don't think so. There's a picture of him. If you Google Jack the baboon, you'll see a picture of him along with James Jumper Wide.
James Jumper Wide with no legs. Oh, yes.
No legs.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's wonderful. He wasn't replaced, though, with another baboon afterwards? I mean...
No, I don't believe so. Not that I've read about.
Didn't pass on the legacy?
No, pass on the baton? No.
The baton, yes. Good Baboon of the Week. Nice choice.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I thought you'd like that one. Have you got your guitar? Because it's time to dish out some prizes to our Patreon supporters, our stakeholders. This is always a nice time for a bit of freestyling from Tim.
Oh, hang on. Yep. Just did the rock and roll act of smashing the guitar before I played it.
Right. Is it all tuned up? Got it in tune?
Yeah, can I just say, I actually performed a U2 song on guitar with a couple of others, the singers, in church last week.
Yeah?
We actually did a bit of an item. Yeah, because it was relevant to the sermon I was giving, which was about... You know, we're one, but we're not the same. So we did the U2 song One, and I played it on guitar.
Oh, right. You did one, right?
Lemon.
Yes.
Of all the U2 songs.
No, you did the song One.
That's right.
You did the song One.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a few chords?
Okay. Does that sound like one? Can you hear it?
It does, yeah.
It does.
It does.
It does. Is it getting better? Do you feel the same? You're dancing like you're in a nightclub, man, and it's not really a nightclub kind of
blame.
song. You say
I was getting into that.
one love.
I was actually doing that to encourage you to keep going.
I know.
Dig yourself
Stopping
deeper.
playing while someone's dancing in a funny way is too amusing not to do. There's one need in the night. One, but we're not the same. We get to carry each other. One.
Wow. Have you been having singing lessons? That we'll save that as a topic for another episode.
Breadcrumbs.
All right. So here are our winners from our Patreon supporters this week that are getting some prizes. A spoon, an Unmade podcast souvenir spoon, forged in the fires of a UK spoon manufacturer, is going to give us some music to build up to it, Tim. It's
I'm
going
playing.
All right. It's going to Robin W. from Leipzig in Germany.
Robin, we're one but not the same. We get to carry each other.
Yeah. Well, hang on. Germany. Isn't Germany the home of Zoo Station?
In fact, the song One was written in Germany. That's very, very true. It was written at the, what's the name, studios? Hansa Studios.
Hansa.
Very famous studios, which I know you've been to and bragged about before.
I know. I've played a guitar in Hansa Studios. Well, I've held a guitar and rubbed my fingers across the strings.
That's pretty much what I do.
So, a Sofa Shop mixtape is going to another of our supporters. It's going to John E. from Richmond, Kentucky.
Nice. Congratulations, John E.
And some Spoon of the Week collector cards. Remember Spoon of the Week, that old segment?
Yeah.
Some Spoon of the Week collector cards are going to Ryan H. from Georgia.
Ryan H. We're one but not the same.
Irene K. from Vienna in Austria.
How glamorous does Vienna sound?
Yeah.
No matter when you say it. You know what I mean? Where are you from? I'm from Vienna. It sounds like it's poetry and a song lyric, but it's...
Sounds like a nice biscuit.
I'll have a Vienna.
Yeah. And we have, last but not least, we're going to send some cards to Jonathan G. in California. Sunny California.
Jonathan G. in California. He's no doubt got a great tan. Everyone in California has a great tan, doesn't he? He's no doubt a really good-looking guy with a great tan.
Yeah. Just with a high-tech startup he's gonna sell for $3 million next year.
That's right. And he's selling it while he's rollerblading down the edge of the beach with his shirt off.
Yeah. Because that's what everything in California is like. Jonathan G's just living the dream, living the life. And now he's got some Spoon of the Week collector cards as well.
Oh, it's all he was hitting the bum with the rainbow when he was born, wasn't he? I mean, really.
It was all funny. He's off to Vienna next.
Off to
The idea I would like to pitch for a podcast is I'm basically just stealing and building on an idea that came up the last episode when our guest Christopher Robinson talked about a lame superpower, and he suggested the lame superpower of being able to make your hair grow really quickly on demand. You could just say, I want really long hair right now. Or you could make your hair shrink back in. Control over hair length was a superpower he suggested.
Yes.
Which I said was really lame. And I think there is much fun to be had with a podcast talking about lame superheroes. What are the worst, lamest superhero powers you can come up with? And how would you use them? Like, what would life be like with them? Are they as lame as you think? So I've come up with some superheroes. Tim, I hope you maybe have come up with a few superheroes. And I also invited our Patreon supporters to submit some lame superheroes. So I thought we might just go through some of them and see what we think.
Yes, nice. I like this idea. I like it a lot.
Can I give you a few to get the ball rolling?
Please.
I like the idea of a superhero called the Jukebox.
Oh.
And the Jukebox's superhero...
I love it already.
...is he knows the words to every song ever straight away and can sing it.
That's fantastic.
oh my God, it's the jukebox. You just name a song and he sings it.
That's awesome.
I know it already.
Nice. I love it. I love it.
You'd love him as a superhero, surely.
Oh,
Jukebox.
yeah.
Thank God the jukebox is here.
I'd always be in competition with him, you know what I mean? Can I remember first?
Yeah.
But yeah.
No one can defeat the jukebox. It's really good at karaoke. What about a superhero called the remote controller, who can change the channel of any TV anywhere in the world just with the power of his mind?
Oh, I do love that idea. I've just gone on Amazon. You know, a couple of years after you've bought a new TV and you go looking, hoping desperately that the model for your TV's remote control is still available out there somewhere. And I've just done that, and I've got it coming from, I don't know, across the world somewhere to replace
Not
ours.
a problem. Not a problem if you've got the remote controller at your side. Can you imagine? Oh my God, I can't change this channel. I've run out of batteries. I haven't got replacements. This is a job for the remote controller. Stand back, kids. I'm going to change this channel.
Because we're forever sticky taping up the bit where the batteries go, because it always slips off so easily after a while. Did you ever do that? And then just when you've got it absolutely, watertight in sticky tape, the battery dies, and so you've got to cut it and peel it all away, and it's all gross. So yeah, I like that superpower.
I know this name's already been taken, but I want to repurpose it. Iron Man, who just by looking at your clothes can make all the wrinkles go away.
Does he do it with his mind, or does he do it with, steam? You know how you can exert steam? And they all
Steam comes out of his palms. It just steams your wrinkles away.
Iron Man.
Or one of his hands squirts out some water and his other hand's really hot.
Yeah.
So he squirts you with water with one hand and then he just rubs your shirt with his other hand.
So he actually has to do the ironing, but he just does it with his hand. How cool would that be with your fingers getting in around the collar and stuff and around the buttons? Oh, that'd be so handy.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Or like this ironing board folds down from his chest.
Yeah.
So he's actually got the ironing board, and then he uses one hand to squirt the water on the shirt on the ironing board, and the other hot hand to wipe the wrinkles out. So he is just like a human ironing board.
I used to love going out. We had a few friends who had a rich modern house, and their ironing board wouldn't be dragged out of the laundry. It would be in a special cupboard on the wall, and they would open a secret door, and it would fold down like this. And I thought it was just the coolest space age house ever to have something like that. But I love that it folds out of his chest.
What about a superhero called the Christmas Cracker, and their superpower is they always know the answers to those lame jokes you get in Christmas crackers?
Yes. I think there's one of those people at every Christmas dinner, to be honest. That's great.
Yeah.
So, or they're the person, maybe they could be the manufacturer of those. Someone sitting around putting those together. They spin their hand really quickly, boom, and pump out a bonbon.
What about a superhero that can just get 10% off any purchase anywhere of anything? The discounter.
We've got that superpower, but only for Hover.
Yeah. What superhero have you got? Have you got some lame superheroes there?
I came up with a couple that came to mind. The first one is called the Stairmaster, and the Stairmaster I have two thoughts about this. The first one is I like the idea that his feet become wheels. You know those special trolleys that help you get the fridge down the stairs, but he's able to negotiate stairs up and down in a particular way.
Right.
I particularly like that he has a wife who's called the Stair Mistress, and but she's been married before, so he's got a couple of step kids.
There's another superhero called the Dad Joker who can speak only in dad jokes.
Only. There's a story where there's a story in the Bible where Jesus and his disciples are crossing a river, and there's this massive storm. And the amazing thing about Jesus is not phased. Everyone's freaking out, but he's asleep in the boat, relaxed, and then they wake him up and he just calms the storm. So he's this cool, non-anxious presence in the midst of something. So I like the idea of a superhero who has the ability to sleep through any disaster that goes on around you.
Mr. Snooze.
Mr. Snooze, Captain Snooze, or maybe I thought about calling him Zeds, But then Zeds falls asleep at the side of trouble, and and people
sleeps through anything.
Just sleeps through anything. It's like, oh, there's a person, like Superman. There's a lady who's fallen off a building, and he's just immediately falls asleep, calm as anything. So those were the two that I came up with. But often I think we're attracted to superpowers that compensate for our greatest weakness. Like, what do you think your greatest weakness is that you would like the superpower to overcompensate for?
Yeah. No, you're right.
Like a super memory or something, or
yeah.
I would like great penmanship. I love writing with a pen.
Penmanship.
But I'd like great penmanship. The quill.
This is a job for the quill.
The quill or calligrapher. I just love better penmanship.
Oh my God, we need to fill in this certificate and fast. This is it.
My hand becomes a pen and I just write.
His hand is a pen. He just dips it in ink.
Just like, wow, that guy's got great penmanship. Yes.
This is a bit niche, and I don't know if it's an American term. It's certainly a term in the UK and in Australia, of a scab. This is someone who works in the place of people who are on strike.
Oh, yes, a derogatory saying. Yes. Mm.
Yes, so if people are striking and someone's brought in to do their job and sort of break the strike, you call that person a scab. And I like the idea of this superhero called the Scab, and he can take the ability of any superhero who is currently on strike or unwilling to do their superhero actions. So if, say, Superman said, I'm not helping humans for the next 2 weeks for some reason because I don't like what you're doing, then the Scab comes in and he's Superman for 2 weeks.
Like Commissioner Gordon, pushes the big red button and the Scab runs in. I'm sorry, Batman's on strike.
But don't worry, I'll do everything Batman would normally do.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I did riff on a few other names from superhero stories. I liked the idea of a superhero called Peter Parker, who can park in any space, no matter how small. He'll get your car in there.
That's great.
And another superhero called Lois Lane, who whenever she's driving anywhere, it doesn't matter. She always picks the right lane. She'll never get stuck in the wrong lane. She's just got a sense for which lane to be in for what's coming up ahead.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That was funny before you even said it or explained it. Just the Lois Lane. I was right there with you, Lois Lane. That's great. Can I say it's not about superheroes, but I do. There is. Can I ask about? I was thinking about Han Solo. Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Well, yes. Yes. Not personally, but I know who they are.
Can I just what is the relationship between them? I know that there are sort of universes where superheroes relate to one another, and there's Superman and Supergirl, and there's sort of family connections sometimes. But Han Solo and Chewbacca, does Chewbacca work for Han Solo, or are they equal partners? Is it like a 50-50? Or is it like...
I think they're partners. Have you seen the movie Solo? That deals with how they meet and come together.
Oh, I have seen that, but I've forgotten. Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll go.
I consider them to be partners.
But Han owns the ship. Chewie doesn't own the ship, so he's like the passenger.
Yeah, true.
He's a bit of a backseat driver, isn't he, Chewie? Like, everything goes wrong and he's like, turn left here, like, it's like, I'm on it.
And he does kind of paw at the controls in a very token way that makes me think he's not very dexterous. Like, should he really be flying a ship?
I'm just bashing the dashboard. That's all he's doing, isn't he?
Yeah. He's all thumbs.
It's like, I need some more air. Give me some more air. Do you need air in the back, guys? That's all his responsibilities entail.
So before coming on air, I put this question to a few of the Patreon supporters, our stakeholders. And yet another reason to support us on Patreon. You get to find out this stuff early and help us out. Tyler Q suggested a hero called Mr. Basic, who can reliably determine the acidity of anything just by tasting it.
Oh.
I thought a better name for that superhero would be Litmus, but Mr. Basic. So we get a bit sciencey here, Tim. Sorry, let's move on.
Oh, you've lost me. Yes, no, not familiar with acids and alkalis.
Liar Man, who can somewhat accurately reproduce previously heard sounds. I imagine them trying to imitate a police siren or a car alarm to escape some peril. Liar is in the lyrebird, not liar is in someone who doesn't tell the truth.
But a liar, man, is another one to come up with the perfect lie for any scenario at any time. Is another superpower.
Yeah.
That we officially don't recommend. That would be a wrong superpower, wouldn't it?
Yes, we don't condone lying. That was Damien, by the way, who suggested that. Michael suggested Taxman, who has the superhuman ability to instantly fill out a tax return with every possible deduction.
Fantastic. Perfect. Yes.
George suggested the Blade Runner, who can run at 133% speed, but only when holding scissors. Carlos suggested Regular Man, who is absolutely normal in every single way.
Oh, wow.
Someone else suggested that too. Someone who's absolutely average in every way.
No particular gifts or skills that are in greater proportion to anything else at all.
Wouter suggested Captain Slow, who has the ability to slow down time. But for everyone, things happen agonisingly slow, but you can't use your superpower to do anything useful because it also slows down for yourself. Wouter also suggested Dr. Could knows exactly what went wrong and what you could have done, but to prevent it, and tells you afterwards. Someone else suggested Captain Hindsight, who has a similar skill. He's really good. He can tell you exactly what you should have done after.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, Michael also suggested Captain Hindsight. Arnow suggested Money Person, who can produce money out of thin air, but only 1 penny per day.
Oh, wow.
Theodore suggested Roulette Superman, who can fly 60% of the time, but the other 40% of the time he just falls like a brick. Jennifer said, we joke that my husband has this one for real, Red Light Man. He can hit every red light while driving. Sometimes his superpower is so good that even if he's a passenger in the car, all the lights turn red for him too.
My wife and I have a superpower similar to that in that we always want to be... We have a large kitchen, but we always seem to need to be at the same part of the kitchen at the same time. So if I'm walking from one part of the house to the bin, she will be walking from another part of the house to the place right next to the bin for some other purpose at exactly the same. And we just forever, we're like banging into each other around the kitchen all the time, even though there's plenty of space for probably 10 more of us.
Scott suggested Breakfast Man, who only has his superpowers before 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, that's great.
This one appealed to me from Michael, the Floater, who has the ability to float 1 inch above the ground.
Totally pointless, but totally cool. Like, yes. I like the idea of Halo Man. You know, they talk about people who are saintly have a halo. This guy just can produce a halo above himself at any particular time. Like, he's not better than anyone else. He just has a halo, so he feels better and looks more righteous than everyone else.
I tell you what, if you've got an idea, if you've inspired an idea, get in touch with us, unmadefm@gmail.com, or go to our Reddit or go to Twitter. Let us know some more lame superpowers, and we might talk about them again in a future episode. But I think this is very good fun. I enjoy this.
Yeah, it is good. Yeah, it's very good. Just coming up with them and talking about them and why. That could lead to all sorts of stories as well as a podcast idea. That's very good.